Jasmine Crockett thought she had Karoline Leavitt cornered, but Leavitt's calm response immediately silenced the room, shifting the entire atmosphere. As the hearing began, the room was packed to the brim, cameras flashing and microphones poised, creating an air thick with tension. Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, sat at the witness table, composed and unyielding. Dressed in a simple black blazer, she radiated an icy confidence, facing forward without a hint of distraction. No entourage, just herself, a glass of water, and quiet assurance across the room. The door swung open, and Jasmine Crockett, the fiery Texas congresswoman, stormed in. Her red blouse seemed ablaze as she made her way to the seat, her gaze cutting and unrelenting. She didn't even glance at Leavitt, fully aware the cameras were on her. The House Oversight Committee chairman, B., called the session to order with a sharp bang of his gavel, though all attention remained fixed on the two women, Leavitt, the Trump spokesperson defending the administration, and Crockett, the Democratic firebrand prepared to tear apart any excuse. The chairman called for the hearing on White House media accountability, his voice steady, but barely audible above the growing tension. The cameras turned to Leavitt, her composed expression illuminated under the lights, as if she had faced this kind of pressure countless times before. Crockett, on the other hand, leaned forward, pen tapping rapidly on a stack of papers, her sharp eyes never leaving Leavitt's. The chairman turned to Leavitt. "Miss Leavitt, you have 5 minutes for your opening statement." The microphone hissed as Leavitt brought it closer, but her voice rang out clear and unwavering. "Thank you, Chairman, and members of the House Oversight Committee. I'm not here to apologize or make excuses. President Trump's administration believes in one simple thing. The American people have the right to speak, and it's not our job to silence them. Whether you agree with it or not, we let them express themselves freely." She cast a brief glance at Crockett, the faintest flicker of challenge in her eyes, but her composure remained intact. The White House doesn't control the narrative. We don't need to. The people decide what they believe and say. If someone thinks that's chaos, so be it. We call it real democracy, not something filtered to the hands of politicians or media who think they get to judge. Leavitt paused, took a sip of water, and set the glass down gently. "I know I'll be grilled today. I'm ready, but don't expect me to apologize for letting Americans be free." She pushed the microphone aside and leaned back in her seat, hands clasped. Scattered applause came from the few Trump supporters in the room, but it was quickly drowned by murmurs of disbelief. The cameras shifted to Crockett, who sat stone-faced, her pen no longer tapping, but clenched in her hand like a weapon ready to strike. The chairman nodded. "Thank you, Miss Leavitt. We'll now move to questioning. Congresswoman Crockett, would you like to begin?" Without waiting for him to finish, Crockett stood, pulling the microphone close, her voice booming like a gunshot. "Oh, I'd love to, Mr. Chairman," she said, the room echoing with a few chuckles from Democratic lawmakers. But the atmosphere quickly grew tense again. She pointed directly at Leavitt, her voice cutting. "You just gave a nice speech about real democracy, but I want to ask, does real democracy mean letting lies spread rampant on X, tearing this country apart? Or is that just an excuse for the White House to dodge accountability?" Leavitt didn't flinch, meeting Crockett's gaze with steady eyes. "Congresswoman Crockett, I don't think you want a real answer," she replied with a light, cutting tone. "But I'll give it. We don't control X, and we don't control the people. You want to call it lies. That's your call. We call it truth. Not everyone wants to hear it." That a faint smile flickered on Leavitt's lips, just enough to set Crockett off. Crockett leaned in, her voice rising. "Truth? You call election conspiracies divisive rhetoric truth? You stand there representing the White House and say letting people get brainwashed is democracy? I can't believe that." She turned to the audience, raising her hand as if rallying their support. "This isn't democracy. This is chaos. Your administration created it." The room buzzed with murmurs. Some nodded. Others shook their heads. Leavitt responded, her voice still even. "If you think the people aren't smart enough to tell truth from lies, the problem's not with us, Congresswoman Crockett. Maybe you should ask yourself who's really trying to dictate what people should think. We let them think freely. You want the White House to filter every word to fit your view? Is that freedom in your eyes?" The words were like fuel on a fire. Crockett slammed her hand on the table, the echo sharp. "Don't play innocent with me," she shouted, eyes blazing. The chairman's gavel struck repeatedly, but the storm in the room only intensified. Crockett stood with hands on hips, fury radiating from her as if she wanted to incinerate Leavitt on the spot. Leavitt remained unmoved, her face calm as ever, the picture of unshakable resolve. The hearing room crackled with tension, two opposing forces clashing, Crockett, a raging fire, and Leavitt, an unmelting block of ice. Crockett took a deep breath, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. "Miss Leavitt, I want to clarify one thing before we go further. You were a lawyer in Texas, fighting for people hurt by lies, like I saw in Dallas, where conspiracies tore communities apart. I'm here for them. And you? You're the youngest press secretary, loyal to Trump, just had a kid, yet you're standing here defending the so-called people's voice. I don't get it. Do you actually believe what you're saying, or are you just reading Trump's script?" Leavitt tilted her head slightly, the faintest hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Congresswoman Crockett, I'm not here to tell my life story," she replied coolly. "But if you must know, yes, I believe what I say. I'm not reading a script. I speak because this administration believes Americans don't need someone holding their hand through every word on X." Crockett scoffed loudly, her voice echoing through the room. "Believe it? Then let me ask you straight. Do you know what the White House leaves on X? Posts about election fraud, anti-immigrant rants? You call that the people's voices? That's lies, chaos. The stuff tearing this country apart. And you, Miss Leavitt, stand there with that bland smile, acting like you're blameless." Leavitt didn't smile. She adjusted the microphone and replied, her voice sharp and controlled. "Congresswoman Crockett, you can call it whatever you want, but we don't write those posts. The people do. If you don't like the content, the issue isn't with us. It's with the very people you represent. What they think, what they say, that's not something the White House can or should control." Crockett slammed her hand down again, startling some in the room. "Don't dodge me," she yelled, pointing straight at Leavitt. "You know what those lies cause. People believe the election was stolen. People threaten violence. And you just sit there saying that's democracy? I'm not buying that excuse. You're Trump's puppet, letting him and his cronies weaponize X." The room erupted into a mix of murmurs and heated reactions, with some Democratic lawmakers nodding and Republicans shaking their heads. Leavitt didn't budge. "Puppet," she repeated, a trace of mockery in her tone, though still calm. "Congresswoman Crockett, I don't run X, and neither does the White House. If you think the people are a weapon just because they say things you don't like, maybe you're the one who doesn't trust them. Who do you want to silence? Trump or your own voters?" Crockett leaned into the microphone, her voice rising to a near shout. "Don't act noble with me. I'm not silencing anyone. I want you and the White House held accountable. Those posts aren't voices, they're hate violence. The stuff turning people against each other. You think you're clever sitting there, playing innocent, but I see through it. You're enabling chaos." Leavitt raised an eyebrow, the first sign of reaction, before quickly regaining her composure. "Hate or not, Congresswoman Crockett, I don't decide that, and neither do you. You want the White House to censor every post on X? Fine, but don't be surprised when the people turn on you. They don't like being treated like kids who need babysitting." Crockett shot back, hand raised as if to drown Leavitt out with her fury. "I'm not babysitting anyone. I'm protecting them from the lies you let spread. Do you know the consequences? People believe conspiracies and act on them. And you just shrug and say that's freedom? Freedom to destroy the country?" Leavitt stared at Crockett, unblinking. "Freedom's always messy," she said quietly, her voice steady. "But what do you want? A world where the government filters every word to protect people? That's not freedom, Congresswoman Crockett. That's control. Something you seem to enjoy." The room filled with noise, a few gasps and murmurs from the stands, some reporters scribbling furiously. Crockett gripped the microphone like she wanted to crush it. "Control?" she repeated, voice shaking with rage. "You dare say I want control? I want truth. I want accountability. And you? You're just Trump's mouthpiece, letting him and his MAGA crowd sow chaos unchecked." The chairman banged his gavel again. Order! Order! But his voice was drowned out by Crockett's emotional storm. Leavitt remained silent, sipping her water, and setting the glass down as the tension continued to escalate to break a sweat. The tension in the room was palpable, like a powder keg waiting to explode, and everyone knew the outcome was far from certain. Crockett was visibly seething, her breath coming in ragged bursts as she glared across the room at Leavitt. The chairman pounded his gavel once again, desperate for order, but the cacophony of voices and emotions only grew louder. Jasmine Crockett, in her fury, was a force of nature, but Karoline Leavitt remained an unshakable stone wall. Her calm, her restraint, it was almost unnerving. It was as though the storm around her could not touch her. Crockett's hands were trembling with rage, but Leavitt's posture remained pristine. Almost clinically indifferent to the verbal onslaught, the audience was divided, some clearly rallying behind Crockett's fiery pursuit of truth and accountability, while others appreciated the cold, cutting precision of Leavitt's defense. The cameras caught every flicker of emotion, every subtle movement, and the hashtags exploded on social media. It was a showdown of the year, an epic clash that would be remembered long after the hearing ended. Crockett wasn't done. She fired one last salvo, her voice rising above the noise, her words cutting like a knife. You can sit there and pretend, Leavitt. You can hide behind your so-called freedom, but I won't let you get away with it. The lies, the hate, the violence, all of it is your doing, and I won't stop until you take responsibility for it. Leavitt, unperturbed, responded with chilling calm. Congresswoman, you can shout all you want, but the truth remains the same. The people decide their own narrative, and no matter how much you scream, you won't silence them. The tension in the room reached a boiling point. Crockett, her voice now hoarse from shouting, couldn't contain herself any longer. She slammed her hand down on the table with a force that rattled the microphone, her face contorted with fury. You think this is just a game, Leavitt? This isn't about freedom. It's about the truth, and you're going to pay for the lies you've let fester. No more excuses. But Karoline Leavitt didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but unmistakable in its clarity. Congresswoman Crockett, I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm here because I believe in the people's right to speak, even when it's uncomfortable. If you want to hold someone accountable, look in the mirror. The lies you're so desperate to stamp out are not the people's fault. They are not the White House's fault. They are the result of a system that no longer trusts its citizens. The room fell into stunned silence as Crockett stared at her, momentarily speechless. The clash had reached its peak, and now it was clear. There was no turning back. Both women had drawn their lines in the sand, and neither was backing down. But the battle for the narrative wasn't over. It had only just begun to office. Her face flushed with anger, her fists clenched at her sides. The energy in her step was one of frustration and defiance, like a woman who knew she had been wrong but wasn't ready to concede defeat. The echoes of the hearing still hung in the air, the clash with Leavitt replaying in her mind like a loop she couldn't escape. The roar of social media reactions, the media pundits dissecting her every word. It was all too much, but Crockett wasn't one to back down. Not now. Her assistant, a maid, tried to approach, but Crockett waved her off with a sharp motion. No, I need space, she muttered, sinking into her chair and burying her head in her hands. The silence of the office contrasted with the chaos of the outside world. But even in that silence, Crockett knew she couldn't escape what had just happened. Leavitt had been everything she wasn't. Calm, collected, calculating. Every inch of her demeanor said control. And Crockett? She had exploded in fury, the very emotion she had built her career on. Fighting for truth, fighting for people. But was it enough? Her mind raced as the images of Leavitt sitting unfazed in front of her replayed. That calm gaze, the cold indifference that had only intensified Crockett's anger. She had tried to show the world that Leavitt was complicit in Trump's lies, that the manipulation and chaos had consequences. But was that enough? The public was divided, and Crockett knew that this moment would shape her legacy. The hum of her phone broke the silence. Notifications flooded in, the screen lighting up with tweets, messages, and the growing hashtag Crockett versus Leavitt movement. The war of words on X had transformed into something far bigger. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about truth, power, control, and who could dominate the narrative. Point one message caught her eye. A tweet from a fellow progressive. After she showed them, Jasmine, we're with you. Keep fighting for us. Her heart steadied a little